Hi, Timo.
Hi, Anand, and hi, everyone on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts.
It's so nice to have you here today. How are you?
Oh, fine, thanks. I'm feeling great and looking forward to the next 1.5 hours.
Yeah, me too. So today my guest is Timo Berthold. He's a director at FICO, leading the mixed integer programming research and development team of the FICO Xpress Solver. In addition, he's a lecturer at the Mathematical Optimization Department of TU Berlin, working on the intersection of academia and industry. Before joining FICO, Timo was a main developer of the open source mixed integer programming and mixed integer nonlinear programming solver SCIP at Zuse Institute Berlin, also known as ZIB. Timo is an expert on all aspects of computational mixed integer linear and nonlinear optimization, heuristic methods, and recently the integration of machine learning methods into optimization solvers. He has published over 50 papers in this field, supervised many talented students, and won multiple prestigious awards for his research. His PhD thesis won the 2014 Dissertation Award from the German Award Society and made the finals of the Euro Dissertation Award. Also, an accompanying article from his PhD work received the Science Communication Prize for being the best math research explained to the general public article of the year. When Timo is not researching or teaching fancy new mixed integer programming techniques, he enjoys going to dozens of punk concerts per year, traveling the world with his family, and exploring science projects and exhibitions with his two children. Timo, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Yeah, thanks you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so let's start. Timo, you were born in 1981 in Berlin. West Berlin or East Berlin?
To Germans, I would say take a guess, but it was actually in West Berlin, former West Berlin.
Okay. Could you tell me a bit about your family background?
Yeah, sure. So my father was a construction engineer. He was also teaching at a university in Berlin, at one of the smaller ones. And my mother was a construction drafter, I think. Is that what it's called? So from same of the kind of area. And later, when I grew up, mainly was a housewife at that time.
Mm-hmm. Are you an only child?
Yes, I am. So never lived with any siblings.
Okay. So, Timo, what do you remember about German reunification?
A little bit. I mean, I was 8 years old when the wall came down, so not exactly the age where you're into world politics. But as a matter of fact, the first pictures I remember seeing from TV, which are not kids shows, was back then the incidents around the German embassy in Prague, where a couple of people from the east fled to the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia at that time and wanted to get inside the embassy. And that was left a very big impression on me because this felt like it was not happening far out in the world, but they were talking about German people. Those were some very impressive pictures. And then I also remember the correspondence from the wall coming down and how on the next couple of days, some supermarkets had some empty shelves because people bought a lot of stuff and so on. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that left a mark on you.
Yes, kind of. And I mean, in hindsight, I also find interesting what did not really leave a mark at that time. So living in West Berlin meant that we were surrounded by the wall. So going just to the outbounds of the city or so, such a thing, going to the forest, lakes around Berlin, this did not exist, right? So when I was a smaller child, I was leaving West Berlin once a year during summer break, and my parents had a caravan, traveled to South Europe for a couple of weeks. And as a 6-7-year-old, I found it completely normal that if in Central Europe, if you want to leave the city that you live in, what happens is that soldiers with machine guns walk through the car that you're sitting in, which feels like crazy to think about nowadays. But for a small child, you just accept as normal reality what you see around yourself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Where were you when the wall went down?
I think just at home, right? That happened in the middle of the night, so I was probably sleeping. and but then heard about it as first thing next day, of course. And yeah, even
Right.
school back then, yeah.
Uh-huh. I'm not sure if you're into soccer or football, as you like. But do you have any memories of Germany winning the 1990 World Cup in Italy?
I watched the final and was, yeah, going crazy about the winning goal. But pretty much this. My parents were not into football, and so I was not really at that age. A little bit more later, but yeah, was interesting game. Yeah.
What did you like to do in your childhood years?
I think one big hobby of mine, as boring as this first minds out, was reading. But I really was an excessive reader then with age 8, 9, 10. So I was reading multiple books per week, sometimes per day. So, and really everything I could get at my hands. So this could be just comic books or some small novels, or like also, I mean, science for children. There's, for the German listeners, there's the series Was ist was? So what is what, which has this format of asking maybe something like 50 questions or so on one particular subject. So that could be the moon landing or Australia or chemistry, I don't know. So all different kinds of subjects. And there were like 50, 60 books out there. And I think I read them all.
Wow.
And yeah.
That's very impressive. In 1994, your family left Berlin. Could you share why?
My father was retiring at the time. My parents had always dreamt of moving somewhere into the green, like they had been living in a city without the possibility to really go to nature for decades. And yeah, so suddenly the possibility was there to stay somewhat close-ish to Berlin, but we still be in a very rural setting. And so we moved to a place which is about 80 kilometers east of Berlin, or well, almost in Poland, so to say. And it was a small village, some 700 inhabitants at that time, yeah.
Yeah, and moving from the capital of the country to a very small town at a young age might be seen by some as a downgrade. How did you handle this change in your life, including attending a new school?
Actually, it happened exactly at the time where you would switch school from primary to secondary school. So that was well timed in the sense that there was a switch anyway. And I really didn't mind at that time. So I also liked the nature. Doing stuff there as a kid was still fine. I did not particularly like my old primary school, let's say, and I liked the new class I was going to at the new place. So I was content with that switch.
All right. You studied in a different town, right? Just next to Lietzen, is it right?
Yes. Yeah. So the town, the big capital of the municipality, which had some 5,000 inhabitants, and one big crossing. Yeah, this was where my gymnasium, so like high school, was. And yeah, I was commuting by bus there. So I think at 6:30 in the morning, I had to be at the bus station every day. And there was like essentially only one bus. So if you missed that, tough luck.
Yeah. What's the city called?
Zelo.
Okay. As you grew older, what type of books did you enjoy reading?
Was somewhat going into more science context, still quite diverse. So there were also a lot of novels that I read, but one interest of mine was astrophysics at that time. So I was reading the books by Stephen Hawking and by Penrose and Green, and yeah, all the like popular science books from that field I try to get my hands on.
Yeah.
And I actually once had the pleasure to visit a lecture by Stephen Hawking in 1999, I think that was. So as a 17-year-old, I went to Potsdam because I somehow heard that this lecture is taking place, and I found it fascinating that you can like see the author of one of the books I enjoyed reading.
Wow. Did you understand anything from that lecture?
Maybe not too much. Also, I mean, listening to an English speaker was also still challenging at the time, but still was a fascinating experience. Also, I mean, I think I walked up there 2 hours early, mainly because I was afraid that I wouldn't find the university, that at the university I wouldn't find the lecture hall, that I might miss a train or whatnot. So I was way too early, and that happened to be a lucky circumstance because in the end there were way more people than the fit into the lecture hall. So was just among the ones that could make it, and yeah, good memories.
Right, lucky you. I wish I had the chance to attend one of his talks or a talk by any of these giants, especially in physics and astrophysics. Did you have any interest in computers and video games?
Well, as you pointed out, a village in a very rural area might not be the most entertaining place to be. So luckily, we had a PC at home. Essentially, when my father then moved his office to a home office, proper home office at that time. And he, as an engineer, had access to computers. And then I could start playing around a little bit with it, checking out the QBasic examples, the snake game that you had there, and see what happens if you change different parameters. And yeah, I did a lot of video gaming then as a teenager, as a hobby. Mainly, I mean, not things like ego shooters or so. That was never an interest of mine. More, actually planning games. So things which connect well to OR. So like Settlers, if that rings a bell with you, FIFA Manager, where you have to essentially all glorified Excel tables. SimCity was one of my favorites. And yeah.
I like to play Civilization.
These kind of things. Yeah, I also played Civilization for some time. I remember one Settlers save file that I had where I took an attempt to bring all the available resources to memory overflow, maxing them out over several days of gaming, and the game was lacking. But not really sure what my goal with this was. Just proof of concept.
You're already experimenting at a very young age. Were you a shy kid?
Maybe not particularly shy, but I was not that social at the time. So I was kind of pushing people away a little bit, and so was a bit of a loner, both as a kid and as in the younger teenage years. And then at the age of like 15, 16, I realized that this is a bad thing, and that's something that I want to change about myself. And I dare to say became quite social since then, but this was like a dedicated effort I tried to take at some point in my life.
Yeah, I can confirm that, because when we met recently in Copenhagen, you were extremely social, extremely kind to me. So I asked this because you mentioned that you were into video games and so on. That's why I just wanted to check. Timo, I always thought you look like someone who enjoys heavy music. That has been confirmed when you sent me your short bio. At first, I thought you were more into heavy metal, but apparently you prefer punk rock.
Yeah, my long hair might be a bit of a wrong hint there. I do enjoy punk rock, particularly German punk, but something in the style of like The Offspring, Green Day, The Clash, Ramones are kind of some international bands that people might know. And there's a lot of German bands where I like to listen to them, like to go to their concerts. Like there's one particular favorite of mine is called Die Ärzte, and I've seen quite a few concerts of them, actually.
How many concerts have you attended of them?
119. as of now.
Are you for real?
Yes.
More than 100 concerts from the same band.
Yes.
When did you start attending their concerts?
That was in 2001, so that's more than 20 years. But then, I mean, per tour, I often see something like 5, 8, 10 concerts, and enjoy because all of them are different.
Wow, so you have to travel around to see them.
I do that, yeah. So I think the furthest I've gone for them so far was in Zagreb, which was a amazing concert in a tiny student club, where at other occasions they fill stadiums in Germany, and it's really enjoyable.
When did you start listening to punk rock?
Someone in my teenage years, I think, like the first punk album that I had was from this band. That was in 1995, so when I was like 13, 14 years old.
Is it true that you had a strong interest in biology in your early teenage years?
That rumor I can confirm, yeah. And, I was always very interested, in particular in like animals, but also all aspects of biology. But that's kind of faded out during high school, which might or might not be connected to some of the teachers back then, both on the like pulling side for biology and on the pushing side for mathematics, where I discovered this beautiful subject.
The singer of Offspring has a PhD degree in biology. I'm not sure if you know that, but
I didn't.
Yeah, the guy's super smart. Were you a good student?
I was good, grade-wise, yes. So, pretty much all of the time. I was not a very well-behaving student, so I got like sent out of class multiple times per year. But also that improved towards the end of high school career. But I actually, towards the end of high school, I ended up as the best in the year of the school.
Wow. Yeah, so you were, let's say, not so easy to manage in terms of behavior, but you excel in terms of grades.
On my good days, yeah. I mean, actually, I was not. It came a bit unprepared to me at that time when the director of the school told me that I was like among the top 3 students who might qualify, because as the best in the year, you have to give like a speech at the graduation ceremony, and I was a bit surprised. Really, I'm among the candidates there. Okay, cool. And then, I would like to say then I hang into the final exams, but that's actually not true. Out of the 4 exams that I had to take, I only learned for one of them, which was the politics exam back then. But for like English, German, and math, I just came with little to no preparation. But still somehow made it.
Yeah. Did you have long hair at the time?
Yes, at that time, yes. So then during my university time, I cut it short for some time and had like short black dyed hair.
Have you considered pursuing a degree in computer science? I'm surprised you didn't, actually.
I did, kind of. So I was fascinated by programming, obviously, but since I haven't really done much programming myself, and my visual idea of a computer science student was that's a nerd who has hacked all the different systems at home and knows already 3 different programming languages and whatnot. So I felt I might not qualify for that. But actually, at the time, we did have computer science lessons in high school. So I learned some limited programming there. But then I thought, like, okay, computer science, mathematics, that's close to each other. And they decided to study mathematics and ended up becoming a programmer eventually.
Yeah, you mentioned that you had computer science classes. What did you learn?
Some different like data formats containers, and like one thing, maybe the most elaborate one, was that we programmed the quicksort algorithm back then. So we learned about like not about complexity theory, but how to get a feeling how different algorithms for the same thing. So we also did like a bubble sort and a quick sort, and then you could observe that they were not exactly performing the same level. And yeah, that.
Wow. So you learn quicksort in school, and that's incredibly surprising. I think I've never heard anyone who had classes, advanced classes to that extent when attending high school. You returned to Berlin in 2001 to begin university. Was that transition smooth?
Very smooth, I would say. So, I mean, there was a clear decision that I wanted to move back, and also that I want to study. So you need to move to a bigger town, and Berlin was not only the closest, but also the one that I already knew. So that was clear. And then actually the graduation ceremony, I think, took place on the 30th of June, and our rental contract started as the 1st of July, just the day after I moved in with my then girlfriend, now 25 years later, still wife. Yeah.
That's great. So was this your first experience living, on your own?
So I did not do a year abroad or so, if that was what you're aiming for. But actually, when I was 17 years old or so, more or less my parents moved out for me at that time. So they got moved to a new place, and they were like commuting forth and back in the beginning, but towards the end of my high school time, they were mostly living in the new place, and yeah, I was living alone in the house in that village.
So party all day.
For the first couple of days, but then you grow up quickly with this. So the first 2 weeks are a lot of good fun. You eat like French fries and pizza all the day, and then suddenly you realize that the house needs cleaning. So yeah.
Yeah, then cooking, laundry, and all the other activities.
Everything. I learned that while I was still visiting. I mean, I knew that before, of course, but this became like regular churns, and I learned to be on my own and looking after everything already during high school. Yeah. But that made the transition also easier than when moving out or moving city for university.
Yeah, you went there really prepared. And what about the transition from high school to university?
I was overconfident, I guess. So, I mean, I looked up the curriculum for math studies first year, and I was like, okay, see there, so differentiation and integration of one variable, trigonometric functions, series of natural number. Come on, I know all of this. I had this in high school. I get what you're doing here. You are doing the first semester is repetition to catch up everyone. So that should be very smooth. And then after the first day of university, I came home a little bit devastated and was like, okay, 90 minutes, and they just went through everything that they knew of mathematics, and now they are starting with the real stuff. This is gonna get freaking tough. And yeah, I mean, I guess quite a few people in the audience here studied mathematics, so they might share a similar experience. So this was then the time where I finally needed to start doing my homework, learn for exams and so on. And yeah, so realized this pretty quickly and sat down every evening, every weekend to good friend of mine who I met in the first year of university. Shout out to Annegret. And we were like a study group for until the end of university. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a talent, but you really had to work hard to be able to pass the exams and all that, right?
Yeah. So that was hard work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine that it was hard for you. But if you're saying, I trust you. When did optimization enter your life?
Optimization, maybe at the time when I was playing those computer games. I just didn't know that planning the traffic network of a city is mathematics or optimization. But at university, that was so in the first semesters, you took your basic courses on linear algebra, calculus, and so on. And then you needed to decide on like subjects where you deepen your knowledge. Linear algebra was much easier, much more appealing to me than calculus. So I saw that there was a thing that's called linear optimization. Optimization sounded fun and sounded related to what I was thinking a mathematician could do with computer programming. So I had heard about these, like mathematicians can work on algorithms. So, okay, I took this course by a person given by a person that you already had on this podcast here, Martin Grötschel. And I mean, he's an amazing teacher. So he gave that very engaged lectures. And I was like, okay, that's it. That's the part of mathematics that I want to be with. And then there were a couple more courses, also by Marco Lübbecke, for example, who people might know, postdoc at that time. And that was very good and fun times.
What an influence you had, right? I mean, it was very fortunate that you had a chance to be exposed to optimization, learning from the best, right? That's incredible. Your award-winning master's thesis on primal heuristics for mixed integer programs is one of your most cited works and is considered a standard reference in the field. Can you share the story behind this work and what you think makes it so influential?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. So maybe starting with how I actually came to write a thesis on that topic, and that was after the courses that I took with Martin Grötschel. At some point, I was invited by Martin Grötschel to Zuse Institute Berlin and like offered the position of a student assistant at this prestigious institute. So I was very keen on taking that opportunity. And I got to speak with 4 different PhD students and postdocs at that time who were looking for a student assistant and like were introducing the different projects they were working on. And one of those PhD students was Tobias Achterberg, who was working on the SCIP solver back then and gave me like a 30-minute primer in computational MIP and said like, well, and now he's looking for his student who could implement some primal heuristics into that solver. And I found that somewhat the most compelling of the different projects, also because it was like, it seemed self-contained to me. It's a clear topic, and I was like immediately, okay, that could be a cool master's thesis if you work on this if you work on this subjects now for 2 years or so, then writing a master's should be a piece of cake. Well, but anyhow, so accepted this position, worked on this topic, and then was missing kind of literature also for myself. Like there was no good overview or so I just like compiled some different references, did the explanations of different types of heuristic on myself and so. And I guess by that, the thesis became of that work that was at that point maybe filling a tiny gap in the field that made it people refer to it. Also, it was way too long for a master's thesis, so way more than was expected from you. Over 100 pages. Some people, or a lot of people, I think, mistook it for a PhD thesis at that time, which potentially gave it some extra credibility. But yeah, it's still one of my most cited works. I think more than 200 citations or so, 20 years later.
Yeah. I'm also happy to know that you met Tobias around that time, and he had an influence on that work too. So the two of you working together, wow, it's scary to think about. So
those were the days.
Yeah. Yeah, you won your so-called diploma in mathematics in 2006, and then embarked on a 7-year journey to complete your doctorate. Can you tell me more about your trajectory during your PhD?
Trajectory. I was looking into different aspects of MIP at that time, also because Tobias left the the SCIP team. Right when I joined, essentially it kind of took his position, at least monetary-wise, and then also together with Stefan Heinz and Kati Wolter, now Kati Jak, we became these three people kind of leading the development of the SCIP solver. And yeah, so I worked on branching here, pre-solving there, symmetries, continued some work on primal heuristic, and so on. Had at ZIB the fortunate situation that this was like a fully paid position. So also it was expected that you do like project work, which is not aimed toward your research, so that you like forward the solvers, that you help with writing grant proposals, that you do. I did some teaching at the time and so on and so forth. I was lucky that I could travel a lot, go to many conferences, and all of a sudden the PhD took quite a long time. And at some point I reviewed the work that I had done and decided that maybe the direction I felt most comfortable with was not what I started originally in the PhD, but was to continue that trajectory of primary or heuristic methods, not only primary heuristics. And I had done at that time lately some work on nonlinear methods, MIP, and put that together as a PhD in the end.
Mm-hmm. So there was no pressure to finish fast, right?
Not really, no, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time, because you never feel that you are done with your research. Obviously, there's always so much more to do than what you already did, and point you just need to draw the line and say that's it and no more.
Yes, it took a while for you to converge, but ultimately the result was just fantastic and it all paid off. So, I mean, talking about your PhD dissertation on heuristic algorithms in global mixed integer nonlinear programming solvers, I mean, you already gave a glimpse of what you studied, but could you please highlight its main contributions, including the so-called primal integral measure?
The primal integral, that's one of the things that one of my contributions that I like. I was working a lot on heuristics, as I think people might have gotten the impression by now. And I was always lacking like a good measure to demonstrate the value of heuristics to solver, how they really contribute towards improving the solution quality, lowering the primal bound, but not that much to improving the time to optimality. And I was like rigorously thinking about it and came up with that measure of the primal integral, which in the meantime has become quite commonly used measure in the field, and it's actually also used in the development of different MIP solvers. Definitely in Express, where this is like one of the development targets that the MIP team has to work towards in each release and so on. And
is it true that Martin was not particularly excited with that name, primal integral?
I think that's true. So he said back at the time that this will not become like an accepted thing, because he thought that the name is terrible. And when talking about integrals, people are thinking about a completely different field of mathematics. And I was like arguing, but it is measuring like an area between two curves. It is an integral, literally. And I think by now, this feels like a little victory.
Yeah. It stood the test of time, and it just was accepted by the community, and that's very nice.
Yeah. Other than that, one contribution that I really like from my PhD thesis is the so-called undercover heuristic, which is a heuristic purely for mixed integer nonlinear problems that like rigorously computes the largest mixed integer linear subproblem that you can get from an NLP just by fixing variables. And I think that's a really nice work and paper, and it's working very nicely in practice. Also, I have very good memories from the time when I wrote that paper together with Ambros Leixner, because that was during the 3 months that I spent at the University of Melbourne.
You went to Australia then at some point.
Yes. I went to Australia. I was invited by Peter Stuckey and Mark Wallace, Monash University and University of Melbourne. Shout out to them, great constraint programming researchers. And yeah, but I also worked on this paper with Ambrose. And since we were like on different sides of the world, it was always like I was working on it from 8 to 8, more or less. And then like we had a phone call every morning, every evening, and he was working on it again during the whole day, and it felt so good. So you go to sleep, wake up a couple of hours later, and suddenly your work has improved and increased. And like we wrote that paper and did a lot of the work within 1 week, which essentially was worked on it 24/7, more or less.
Wow. I mean, that's a very good feeling. I think I have experienced something similar because I'm a night owl. So when at times collaborating with some European colleagues, I also have that feeling of, when you wake up and you just have this progress, someone else made some progress, and then when they wake up, they see also the progress, and it's fun, right? It's very nice.
That's super encouraging.
Yes. Yeah. Your PhD dissertation received a couple of awards, including one for public understanding of science, which really caught my attention. Could you share more details about that?
Yeah, it's also one of my favorites. Maybe it's not the one that's like most prestigious in your CV, but I'm really happy about this one. So that's by a German society, the Klaus Tschira Stiftung, who tried to push forward the science communication, and they have an award for each of the different STEM subjects. So one for physics, one for chemistry, one for mathematics, computer science, and I'm missing a few ones, I think, every year for like the best article explaining research that you did in your PhD or some other thesis. And what you have to do is like write 1.5 pages, I think, or 2 pages about your PhD work, and in a way that it's understandable to a general public. And then there's a big committee of journalists and also a scientific committee reviewing this. And if you succeed, you win also a nice monetary prize, by the way. And this article got published in something that's, maybe similar to something like the National Geographic Journal of Germany. So yeah, that was good fun. And there was a photo session afterwards where if you search carefully on the internet, you might find some very funny pictures of me dressing up as an undercover agent, trying to fit rectangles into circles and so on. Yeah.
That's super cool, and I'll search for that for sure. Toward the end of your PhD, did you plan to stay in academia, or were you already thinking about transitioning to industry?
For most of my time at ZIB, the plan A actually was academia. I very much enjoy researching and teaching, and yeah, but then FICO came around, made a great offer. It's research after all, so it was like a industry but research position, and that was very attractive. And after I joined FICO, actually for the first year, I was still thinking whether maybe an academic path would have been also a good choice. But by now, I'm convinced that is one of the best decisions I ever made. Yeah.
Right.
So.
And how did you manage to juggle work, your PhD, raising a young child, and being there for your pregnant wife? Because you once told me that by the time you joined FICO, you had this small kid and your wife was pregnant. So
yeah. How did I manage? Hardly, I would say. 2014 really was one of the most eventful years in my life. New job, finishing PhD, second child, new apartment. We bought that apartment where I'm currently in at that time. Before that, we were always, that was a tough time. I had big support, not only by my lovely wife, but also by friends of mine who looked after our young daughter at the time. And also, I mean, connecting back to previous questions, that was the time where it was clear that you need to make a cut on your PhD now, finish now, and then that's it, and it's over. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine. How did you manage that? It's just crazy. I remember that I myself had to teach when I was finishing my PhD, and it was really hectic. But in your case, it's just taken to another level, and I'm glad that you survived. You have a daughter and a son, correct?
Yes.
Nice. You began as a developer at FICO and later became the team leader for mixed integer optimization. What does a typical workday look like for you now?
A little bit of everything, or maybe the blessing of my situation is that at least on the good days I can just decide what I would like to do today, because there's so many different things happening at the same time. So there's of course the management of my team and working with all the people from my team, doing plans, discussing ideas and so on, which is, I mean, I do have a great team, which I really like, fantastic people. And well, occasionally I still can do some development of my own. So sit down, program a little bit, much less than I want these days, but well, such is life. There's teaching at the university and working with masters and PhD students, and all happening at the same time.
Wow. How does it feel to have an impact through various activities such as research, leadership, development, teaching, and supervision?
Oh, that feels good. I mean, it's different kind of impacts, right? That you ideally, if you do your job good, that you have through these different things. I mean, through the development of a commercial solver and working with the teams there, do you have like really an impact on industry? So the methods that I developed during my professional work life are employed in many big companies all over the world, and that feels very nice to know that processes run differently because of what you did, and hopefully better. And working with the team as well as working with master students, PhD students, is where you have a very personal impact on people, and hopefully some of the students later remember that they enjoyed the time, their master's time, enjoyed the lectures that they heard at university, like where I'm soon doing the here at work lectures again, where I hope, or I know that for a couple of people this is like a nice experience because it's quite different from standard university lecturing. And then finally, research, the papers that you write, is something that has a longer lifetime potentially, where you have very indirect impact. So you're sending this out more or less into the void and hope that someone will pick it up. And that's also interesting to think about.
Yeah, so you hardly get bored, I assume.
Yeah, boredom is not one of my problems, no.
Yeah, good for you. What type of partnership ZIB has with FICO?
A good partnership. So there's these research campus modal, which is like an initiative by the German Ministry of Science, where there's some extra funding for private-public partnerships, exactly like what ZIB and FICO have when you work together on research projects. And yeah, it's been more than 10 years now that we're doing this together, supervised students together, had different research projects together, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Xpress is one of the older solvers around, if not the oldest. How do you explain its longevity and its ability to remain competitive over the decades?
It might actually be the oldest solver that's still in common use, right? So it's more than 40 years since the first lines of Express were coded. Of course, there were solvers before that, but not around anymore to my best of my knowledge. So there's like continuous development that MIP solving is all about, like improving your algorithms every time, every year, every release, getting 20% faster, solving new problem classes, adding new features, reacting to the needs of the industry. And I think Express always has played a good role there.
Right. So big series of tiny improvements.
That's what computational MIP is about, at least these days, right? So we are happy if a new feature that we implement brings like 1 or 2% performance improvement. So to get your 20% year on year, you need to have 20 such features each and every year. Then plus those that don't work out in the end, that you never hear about and never make it. This also, of course, exists. It's research after all. You can't predict the outcome when you start working on an idea.
Yeah, right. Timo, what types of optimization problems can Xpress solve?
Well, all different kinds of linear, integer, nonlinear optimization problems, combinations thereof. So it started with the simplex solver 40 years ago. Then MIP capabilities were added, barrier algorithm at some time. I think it's more than 20 years now that Express has had a local nonlinear solver, and recently we extended this to a global solver for MIP, which is nice.
Wow. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Xpress is the first major commercial solver capable of solving non-convex mixed integer nonlinear programming problems to optimality, right?
Long sentence, but that might be correct. Yeah. So we were like a little bit leading the pack there, I guess, with taking a major commercial MIP solver and moving it to the global solution of non-convex MIP. So there were MIP solvers, like particularly also academics, but also some smaller commercial ones before. And we see that other solvers follow our example there now, which is great to see.
Yeah. Can you pinpoint the solution methods you use to solve this type of problems? Is it based on outer approximation or something in this sense?
Yeah, it's like outer approximation-based branch and cut algorithm working with linear relaxations everywhere, and then cutting yourself towards feasibility and doing spatial branching whenever you need to resolve non-convexities.
Mm-hmm. What can you say on numerical issues in mixed integer programming solvers and Xpress in particular? What can a modeler do?
What can a modeler do? So produce stable models. Like one of the things that you might want to have a look at is the coefficient spread in your matrices, that you don't get like 10, 12 different orders of magnitudes in your coefficients, which is getting close to the length of a mantissa of a floating point number. So you inevitably get very inaccurate results there. There's a couple of features in Express that try to address numeric features, like there's an ML supported algorithm to decide on a different scaling algorithm based on the numerics of the problem. There's some non-default features for iterative refinement to improve the accuracy of the relaxation solutions, and integer refinement to guarantee exact integrality of your integer variables, which you can also neatly combine with each other. So we try to do a lot to address numeric challenges.
Yes. Timo, there's a lot of work on finding linear formulations or approximations for problems that might also be formulated non-linearly. Mm-hmm. How does that fit into this context?
Yeah, of course, it's there's always a modeling decision, and if you can come up with a good and tight linear model for your problem, that's typically preferable over non-linear variants of the same problem. But of course, there are a lot of problems that are inevitably nonlinear, right? So where the physics, for example, prescribe nonlinearities. Like one example, which also the SCIP development for nonlinear solving started on, was gas transport problems, where you have third-degree polynomials in there, and you just can't get around them, and they are not easily, nicely to be approximated a priori. So this is the point where you really need nonlinear solvers, and we see quite some applications of this in industry pooling problems or portfolio optimization, where really the nonlinearity is very deep integrated into the problem.
Right. I asked this because one usually think that facing non-linearities is just very complicated in the mixed integer programming scenario. And we naturally think of linearizing everything, but sometimes it's just not the best strategy, because with the advancements of mixed integer nonlinear programming solvers, sometimes it might be interesting to just give it a try and see what happens when you try to solve the problem originally, taking in consideration the nonlinear aspects, right?
Yeah, I mean, AP-based solvers for MIP do essentially a similar thing, but they generate a linear relaxation on the fly much more dynamically, right? So you would get a much finer relaxation at the point where you're actually interested in, where your optimization is converging to, and a very coarse or no linearization at parts that are far away from the optimal point. So it's much more dynamic and therefore typically preferable over a priori linearization, because it might still be smaller and more accurate at the same time.
Right. So there are some linearizations going on, but in a much more dynamic fashion, instead of, thinking about linearizing everything at first and just make the formulation not computationally tractable, as opposed to dealing with them on the fly.
Yes.
If I understood correctly.
Yes. And I think it's important to state, even so it's called outer approximation, that this is a proper relaxation, right? So you really do get provably optimal solutions in the end.
Mm-hmm. Does Xpress incorporate constraint programming techniques to enhance the performance of its MIP solver?
There's techniques in the solver like conflict analysis or restarts, which also are another MIP solvers, which originally come from the constraint programming community. So we have learned a lot there. Recently, I've worked on some very interesting project for pseudo-Boolean type of conflict resolution together with the PhD student Joni Maxey from Zuse Institute Berlin, which might be one of the next candidates to make it into MIP solvers. And in the Xpress portfolio of products, there's also a CP solver, but this is like a separate product.
Right.
So not directly integrated in the MIP solver.
Yeah, I'm aware that you have the specific constraint programming solver, but I just wanted to check whether you had something related to the MIP solver. Have you identified any major breakthroughs regarding the use of AI for MIP solvers, and how does Xpress benefit from the use of machine learning to improve performance?
Major for MIP solvers, maybe not so much. I think for particular applications, there's some enormous breakthroughs how you can combine ML methods to create some data or prepare some data that you then plug into optimization problems. So that's definitely a thing. Inside the solvers, we do use some ML models, yes, but that's again these typical 1-2% performance improvements. So nice, but I wouldn't call it a breakthrough. Actually, in the beginning, I found it challenging to get a grip on what would be the best places in the solver to work with ML techniques, and then found that these were kind of the places where you do binary decisions between two alternative methods. There's no great incumbent rule at the place yet. You have good features available, and that gives you a chance. I think one thing that's needs to be kept in mind is that in MIP solving, you always have a huge amount of noise. So due to performance variability, you see a lot of improvements and degradations that are more a chance than an actual signal that you want to measure. And finding your signal in between this noise is not only in the ML context, but that's generally a huge challenge for MIP solver development.
Mm-hmm. I saw somewhere that you guys use linear regression, right?
That's for the learning to scale project, where for different numerics of the problems, we use different scaling methods, yes. So nice, small, explainable model. That's exactly what you would like to have.
Uh-huh. What are the different types of users that use Xpress, and can you estimate how many of them use advanced features like callbacks?
There's definitely very different types of users. Like there's people like you and I, Anand, who love to sit down with the console and then just fire up your server without any graphic interface from there, use the programming API, every feature that's in there, implement advanced callbacks for branching, for cutting, for your own heuristics. So everything, yeah. So that's definitely a thing. That's probably not the majority of people. That's the one that I often get exposed to because they ask the most sophisticated questions in support. Then those users like the OR economist person who uses our modeling language Moselle or like our Python interface to do your mathematical modeling and then call the solver from there, maybe do some very restricted callbacks or so. That's still supported, of course, everywhere. And then there's the business users who work with a product called Express Insight, which is like a cloud-based development and deployment platform where you have a very nice graphical user interface, very easily can, via some drag and drop functionalities, set up your own data input, parsing, output, getting visualizations of your solution progress and results, and share them with people all throughout your company or with customers, do your own app development. And also something that's like very special about FICO, that you have these full stack of different possibilities within one company.
Right.
But yeah, enough for advertisements.
Can you cite the name of some of your customers?
Yeah, of course, for many of them we can't because there's NDA in places. But if you go to like FICO.com and search for success stories for optimization, you would find names as Procter & Gamble, Shell, American Airlines, DoorDash, which might be known to the US people here. Yeah, and many other airlines and banks and big companies from the energy sector, tech, e-commerce, media companies. So I guess it's fair to say that the majority of listeners on the podcasts within the last 24 hours have used the service by some company who runs Express optimization in the background.
Yeah, that's very cool. What would be considered good hardware for running a mixed integer programming solver like Express? And could you also elaborate on the path consistency issues that arise from the employment of different hardware configurations by users?
That really depends on your problem. So what I think always helps is a high CPU weight, that you can get a lot of throughput on each thread. And then it diverges. So if you really have a big problem or a problem that produces a large search tree, even though it might itself be quite small size, then memory gets important. Also, when you have large search trees, then it is when MIP solvers shine in parallelization. So, but if you have a problem which mostly solves or spends most of the time at the root node, going huge on the number of cores won't really help you. So for most MIP problems, something like 8, 16 cores, which nowadays becomes standard even for laptops, is kind of good enough. So in most cases, there's no need to invest in huge servers each day. So standard hardware would do in many cases. And then, of course, for some customers, so if you have like many people working on the same project within the company, or if you're a company that are reselling optimization technology, then the reliability of getting path consistency between different hardwares becomes important. Maybe should elaborate on this a little bit. So what we mean by path consistency is that not only when you run the same problem, again, you get the same result, but you get exactly the same solution path. Yeah? So you would exactly visit the same number of nodes and the same nodes in a search tree, for example. That all major MIP servers, I think, guarantee you this if you do this on the same machine. So same machine, same problem, same solution path. Great. But what happens if you exchange the machine? If you exchange the operating system, if you change from an x86 technology to a platform, like these different kind of things. And there, Express has some very high guarantees for perceiving or path consistency, such that you can have a consistent path between your 64-core ARM Linux server and your 8-core Windows x86 laptop, which is very nice for development, of course.
Literally very consistent. So,
Yes.
so I understand that it's very challenging to do that, and that's why I asked this very specific and technical question. Express offers free academic licenses, correct?
That's correct, yes. So there's an academic partnership program where you can apply and then receive free licenses that you have to renew every year, given that you are a member of an academic institution.
Right. Timo, one might be tempted to discuss the differences between solvers like Gurobi and Express, but instead, I would like to ask you about your friendship with subject to guest Tobias Achterberg. Very tough surname, by the way. You two have a lot in common, the same advisor, a passion for mixed integer programming solvers, a love for punk music, and so on. However, he works at Gurobi and you at FICO. So how do you guys make it work?
Well, not talk so much about work when we see each other, or talk about the general aspects of MIP solving, but yeah, I think that's generally something which is very nice about this computational MIP community. It's a small community. People all know each other, are on good terms with each other, even if sometimes you might be on competing companies, but that doesn't carry over to a personal level. And yeah, we meet a couple of times each year, and it's always great.
Yes. That's one very nice thing that you mentioned, is the fact that we have a very friendly community. And I know that's a very limited number of people are developing commercial MIP solvers or even open source MIP solvers. But I think it's fair to say that it's fair play. I think that's my impression. Very, decent competition. I don't see any, people being hostile to one another. And I think that's very, very good. And why do you think it became possible to have such a friendly environment?
I think that's partially because the individual people who are influential in this community and very nice people, quite a few of them you already had on your podcast here. Also, like from a business perspective, I think there's a general agreement that it's beneficial for everyone if we forward the field as a whole. And I think that's also in the academic perspective on where we can grow the field. The field is growing, and if everybody is pushing into that direction, that's good for everyone. Yeah. So maybe mathematicians are quite rational in these things. I don't know, or it's just a lucky circumstance, but it's really cool the way it is.
Yeah. In 2022, you became a lecturer at TU Berlin. Mm-hmm. Did you miss academia, and what drives you to continue writing papers?
Yeah, I never really let go of that aspect, and as I mentioned earlier, it's very nice to have these different aspects of your work life. The one where I'm mostly working on a product, the one where you're mostly working with people, teaching people, and so on, and being able to combine this always was a dream of myself, and I always worked towards this dream and had big support on either side of these two aspects to make this possible.
Right. What are your plans for the future?
Plans for the future? I'm good. Keeping the position, I'm happy. I mean, for the short term, I'm currently working on a book together with Domenico Savanin and Andrea Lodi on primal heuristics in MIP solver, my favorite topic, and it's really great to work with these two guys. And we are finished with writing it. We're now waiting for it to be published with Cambridge University Press next year.
Wow. Really looking forward to that book.
Thank you. I should send you a copy. And then, yeah, for long term, that's a tough question. I guess one of the plans for the future is to help growing the subject further, teaching more students, spreading the word of computational MIP, and hopefully being able to conquer new application fields, new types of optimization models that you could solve very effectively.
Mm-hmm. Do you think more people or less people are becoming interested in developing MIP solvers or working on computational MIP in general?
Of course, I wished it were more. It's a challenging topic, right? So I mentioned earlier the gradual diminishing returns that you get these days from MIP solving. So this might scare some fresh PhD students away, but let me tell you, don't be scared away. It's a very fulfilling topic to work on. It's great if you discover something. It's highly influential, so chances are that your methods will find their way to many companies around the world if you have a nice new discovery in computational MIP. And there's interesting places and companies that you can work at later with that background.
Yes, that was a very good message. Thanks a lot for encouraging the youngsters to pursue that path, which I find it fascinating. Timo, it was fantastic to have you here. I hope you had a nice time. I was very entertained by your stories and your style. So I'm very grateful for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for everyone who listened until the end of this episode. And yeah, talk to you somewhere at a conference or somewhere in the world.
Yes, it was lovely to meet you, as I said, this year. And I hope to meet you again soon. And of course, if you want to visit Brazil or João Pessoa, my town, you're most welcome.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think we should make that possible.
Yeah. So thanks a lot once again. Danke. Take care and see you soon. Bye. Ciao.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye, everyone.